Hey, it's David with No Chaser. And, you know, I talk about a lot of issues and obstacles and just the goings-on of the crazy mind of an alcoholic or addict and just a lot of things that can seem bleak. I try to be honest. I try to be realistic in kind of what I talk about. Give like a sort of insight that may come from just what the experience is like. But, I'm going to try here. I'm going to try more so to be a little bit more sort of hopeful or positive in kind of the mind approach to a lot of this stuff. So, I think about a lot of times that I had struggled when I was sober. Just kind of grinding it through, maybe not really like engaged in the proactive behaviors or therapy or activities or just things I needed to do to get better. And it was just like a real struggle. And, a lot of times the mind by itself, especially when the obsession kicks in and cravings kick in, it can just become very, very difficult to just withstand the storm, especially when you have other factors that come into play, like external factors, like the job is terrible or the relationship is having some issues or, mental health problems and stuff like that. And I try to get this sort of repertoire of things that reasons to, stay sober, reasons to stay clean, reasons to keep doing this thing, even though it just seems sometimes hopeless or it seems like this is just not going to work or, man, you're just going to go back to the way you were. And that's all it is. All those sort of cynical thoughts. And, I was thinking about this where I thought about the gift of choice. And what I mean by like the gift of choice, I don't know, it sounds like a Hallmark movie or something, but the gift of choice I feel like is, with the struggle that goes into my mind sometimes when I think about drinking again is a struggle because it's actually an option. It's not an imperative. It is not it's not a given. It's an option. It is a decision that I can make. And I know that when I was in the midst of drinking or when I've started a relapse, there was no choice to be had. I mean, this goes into one of those things where you can always say like, yes, there is a choice. Like no one is actually taking the liquor and shoving it in your mouth and have a gun to your head or, putting the needle in your arm and just, going to push you off a building if you don't shoot up. Like I understand all that, but in a sense, I had a gun to my head just that I was pointing at myself. Like when I was in drinking, in that whole crazy cycle that is so perfectly attuned to keep a person addicted, that, sort of feeling feeling physically and mentally and emotionally terrible, and the only remedy for that is the thing that is making you feel terrible. When I was caught in that, like, honestly, some sort of like other external intervention had to happen for me to stop. Like I had to be institutionalized, whether it was jail or a psych ward, or I had to go to the hospital because I was really sick, or basically I just had to be locked to a couch going through withdrawals where I couldn't even move. Like that was really only these things that could stop me because just in that mind, when it's all going on, when the engine's running and you're in full active addiction, it just feels like, honestly, there's not a choice. It is just a given. I'm going to do this. How can I get away with it? Whether it's just hiding it from family, loved ones, coworkers, whoever, or just being able to do it, scraping together the money, just all these like bare bones things just to be able to do the drug or to drink. And it really felt like there was no choice. It wasn't an option whether I was going to do this or not. It was just a thought of like, how will I be able to do this? But it was a foregone conclusion. So when I think about it, when I'm in a state where I feel lost or lonely or depressed, and of course there's all these things you should do like reaching out or doing something positive to distract you. But sometimes you're just caught in these moments. You just feel like so by yourself. And you just, the thought, there starts to be a little itch. And then that itch turns into, thinking about it, fantasizing about it, what ifs, all these sort of things that are just unraveling the thread of getting to like plan making and then actually like not only just visualizing it, but really thinking about how it'll be done. Well, maybe I can, all that stuff that comes into mind when you really want to do something you don't want to do, you really want to do something you shouldn't do, but that hunger is there. And I just think about, when I'm caught in sort of those whirlwinds, that I should always remember will pass. They always pass, even though it doesn't feel like it will. Feel like an eternity. Like my brain is always going to be like this. They will pass. But in those moments, I try to reflect that like right now, there is a choice I can make. As long as I don't let this go too far, Because I feel like at a certain point, if I've grabbed the keys and I've started the car and I'm driving to the liquor store, it's over. You know, it's done. But before that, before it gets to that, I still have a choice to do something about this. And again, at the time when the desire to drink is so strong and things feel so bleak or empty or hopeless or lonely or just whatever it may be, the fear, the anxiety, all the things that may go in through your head, and it just feels like it isn't a choice, it still is. At least for me, compared to what it was like when I was in active drinking. Because honestly, again, you can make the argument whether it's like literally or like physically a choice. Like, yeah, I mean, yes, technically as a person, even though I was drinking, I could not do it. I mean, it wasn't actually impossible, but I mean, God damn if it didn't feel that way. And I think about that where, you know, if I think about drinking and how in those moments it can be so difficult to hold back, I try to remember that even though it doesn't feel this way, this is actually going to be the easier moment to not drink. Because once it starts, it's almost impossible. Like I've said this before, it feels like once the liquor goes into me, one brain is taken out and another one is put in. It's almost like there's a different lens to my life. Everything's gray and all the rules have changed. All the things I believed in, all the values or mindsets or any sort of like notions of how life is, they all change. It becomes like this, you know, this cynical, nihilistic sort of like who cares, hedonistic, just do what you want because screw it. And everybody may not feel like that way. Some people may just feel like I'll just get away with this for a little bit, or this is just a reprieve I need. I'll be able to stop whatever. And, you know, it's a battle between like will or, you know, delusions or just obsession. It's all that type of stuff. But I just feel like, I don't know, it seems like a thing to not be so grateful for because it doesn't seem inherently like positive. But to me, it is just that I'm struggling. I have a choice not to do this. There's still something I can do because in that sort of I always compare it to like a train where you don't like do a U-turn with a train. You don't make a sharp left or a sharp right. It just kind of goes. And man, they take forever to stop. And that's how I felt like once I started drinking. Like I'm still driving the bus here. I can still turn away. I can still do something about it. But once I do that and the train has left the station and it's impossible to stop. But right now, regardless of how I feel, it is not impossible. I can still do something. You know, it can be hard to bring up the will to do it. It can be harder because you don't feel like you have the support or resources, but you can still do something because you have not fallen down yet. You're still standing and there's something can be done. And I normally don't get into this sort of like pep talk, like inspirational sort of things. Like I'm usually a curmudgeon a lot, but honestly, I feel that way. I mean, there's a, you know, a plethora of like reasons and things in your life of why you shouldn't drink and use. But when it gets to like those just bare, dire moments, it's nice to just be like, you know what, I still am holding the wheel and there's still something I can do about this. I am not yet in that trance where I'm beginning to just like sleepwalk through life because I'm under the spell, if you even want to like call it that. It feels like it, the spell of active addiction. Under the drugs, once that crazy cycle where your brain basically gets hijacked and like something else is controlling it at that point, you know, your strings are being pulled like it's not even by yourself. Almost these animalistic urges to just I have to drink. You're not in that yet. There's still hope just in the moment, and there's hope in just having a choice of what you can do at this moment. As bad as it can feel, as it feels like this, just it's insurmountable, and especially in that craving mindset where you're like, this will never end, and I have to do this, I have to stop this. You haven't done it yet, you haven't used, you haven't drank, and you still have a choice. You can still do something about it. And I don't know, just the potential in that, the hope in the fact that you can still do something about it. I hope it can bring comfort or help or inspiration or what have you, some sort of perspective that can be helpful. Because I find it helpful myself. All right, that's my little spiel. I hope everyone out there, you know, I wish you all well. If you're in active addiction, if you're struggling in recovery, if you're doing good in recovery, if you're just watching this just because it may seem interesting, maybe in a dark way, or you're watching it for some sort of educational value because you have a loved one that's suffering, hope all of you are well.